The series that would never end ends today, and it was on decreasing crime. We started it last week. And we've gone over a couple of factors that you would probably think of. Talked about incarceration not really making much of a difference, police force making a difference. And now we're on to some that maybe are a little bit more outside the lines that you would think of. And we're going to start with alcohol consumption. And what you see there is a chart of alcohol consumption that shows a decrease during the 90s and early 2000s. And the reason this is important is because there's been a few studies on the role of alcohol consumption in property crime, but also violent crime. And they found that about 40% of state prisoners convicted of violent crimes were under the influence of alcohol at the time of their offense. So there is certainly some correlation with alcohol consumption and increased crime rates. The reason this is interesting too, sorry, can we go back to that one real quick? The reason this is interesting too is that when you talk about a little spike that's gone on recently under the COVID situation, it's a domestic issue, but it also does probably have to do with the increased alcohol consumption that we're seeing during this COVID pandemic. So we were going down, down, down. We had a little spike up during the pandemic, and that may partially have to do with this correlation. So they think that alcohol consumption had about 5 to 10% to do with the decline. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Income growth. So the economy matters, but some of the factors aren't as important as you might think. For example, you think unemployment, and you think that would be a good correlating factor. The issue is 2008 and 2009, we had low or high unemployment, and we did not have high crime. And so they found median household income is actually a better indicator of crime rates. And so you can see again in the 90s it picked up all the way into the 2000s. Then you can see the Great Recession there in 2008, 2009, in which median incomes went back down, but we did not have a huge crime spike as a result of that, which obviously is good news. Now here's an interesting one that you may not have thought about. Lead. So you're seeing gasoline, lead in tons per 3,000 population, and then violent crime. Now look, a lot of things correlate but don't prove causation. But there's some actual data behind this, quite a bit. And one is that individuals exposed to lead at a young age are shown to have decreased IQ and problems with impulse control, including lashing out into violence. And so the removal of lead additives from motor fuel and also houses in a lot of cases could correspond, and a lot of studies think there is a corresponding factor with crime rates going down. Now here's the hard part with all of this. So you've got lead gasoline, which is now unleaded. You've got lead paint in still some houses, but a lot of it has been remediated. But ladies, the problem is with lead, and the reason it's still debated, is it also correlates with other socioeconomic factors. So you can make the argument that kids who were exposed to more lead fuel were in urban areas where there were other factors, or houses that were older because they had less money and they were exposed to more lead. So trying to isolate and say it's for sure the lead, not all these other things, is what makes that one still kind of an up for grabs theory.
Would have never made the correlation between lead paint and crime. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, I mean, I think the agreement is there is correlation. It's just hard to suss out the percentage. And that's the case even when you talk about police officers. It's just hard because a lot of these factors go together to strip them apart. But at the end of the day, good news is, no matter what, that crime has been down since the 90s. And even though we did see a little increase with COVID, I think it's fair to say there's been a lot of extra stressors in that situation.
Yes. And there you have Keith's personal version of Freakonomics.
Yes.
There we go.
Good book.
In 5 parts.
Yeah.